Welcome to the Thriving Farmer Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Kilpatrick. Our mission is to inspire, educate, and celebrate sustainable farming. We believe that you can build a profitable, sustainable farm that gives you true farm freedom. Join us as we talk to farmers, innovators, educators, and entrepreneurs to glean their top takeaways in business and life.
This episode is sponsored by Grip. Got lots of people, places, and things to track? Grip is the easiest way for farmers to track anything important to their operation. With flexible QR code tracking, keeping digital records is a snap with Grip's operator-first mobile app centralizing alerts, reminders, electronic forms, and team conversations. With simple month-to-month pricing and no long-term commitments, Grip can transform and streamline your operation so that you can focus on what's most important, growing. For a limited time, get 15% off any monthly or yearly subscription at grip.ag/pricing with the code THRIVEIN25. That's GRIP.ag/pricing with the code THRIVEIN25. Hey, Thriving Farmers. Michael Kilpatrick here with yet another episode of the Thriving Farmer Podcast. Today, my guest is Zeb Horrell, who is the Chief Regenerative Officer at Mangaroa Farms in New Zealand. Zeb brings a deep passion for bioregional resilience and collaborative land models, and he's on a mission to build thriving ecosystems and communities through regenerative agriculture. Welcome to the podcast.
Kia ora, Michael. Good to be connected, man.
Absolutely. So give us a little bit of background of where you are in the world.
Yeah, so I'm on Mangaroa Farms. We're just outside of Wellington, the capital in New Zealand. We've got 1,000-hectare farm and a pretty amazing growing climate. Just before the show, you were telling me about the troubles in Ohio. We definitely don't hit the extremes like you've got there, but we're blessed with about 1,400 mils of rainfall. We're pretty close to an urban population. There's Wellington, Lower Hutt, Upper Hutt. It's kind of a series of towns and cities, and then we just pop over the hill. And then we're right there. So we're the closest farm to the capital, which is obviously, where Parliament is. And so one of our strong points is just that proximity to a population and a proximity to some of the decision-making capital in New Zealand.
So I'm assuming when, bureaucrats may want a photo op, they may come talk to you or something like that, or the TVs or the newspapers are asking you for quotes.
There's a little bit of that historically, and we're a relatively young project, so we're still building our name in the space. But we've had the prime ministers out having a grill before the elections, and there's quite a few tours checking out our market garden, and always a bit of interest in what we're doing out at Mangaroa.
Okay, so let's give us a little bit of background before you got started. What were you doing till you started your farm?
Okay, well, I've only joined the project more recently. I'm from Southland, right down the bottom of the country, and I was a sheep and beef farmer. Grew up in a generational farm with about 5,000 sheep, and I just had a real keen eye for what was new and what was next, and what were the ways that we could farm and relate with the land in accordance to some of the global pressures and challenges we're facing. And so that looked like stepping away from a global commodity product, lamb or wool in our case, and into more local life-centric operating models. And it was through exploration with that, but also finding some challenges with our local context and just family dynamics that I was offered the job and moved up to Mangaroa. So I've only been with the project as the Chief Regenerative Officer for 1 year. And the farm has been operating for about 10 years. Mangaroa has been sort of growing, but only really in the last 3 or 4 years have we really been staking a claim as a functional and highly operating property.
Okay. All right. So talk to me about what are the different enterprises on the farm? Because you guys have quite a bit of land.
Yeah. So it's 1,000 hectares, like I said. About 1,600 acres, and it's a lot of that's in pine forestry, which is about ready for harvest. And what we're hoping to do is replace that pine, radiata pine, as the common species used in New Zealand. And how do we transition from a monoculture pine forest into native vegetation? So that's a big question and work stream on the property. We've been planting a lot of natives around the riparian areas, around the waterways, and so there's that forestry component. The predominant land use is sheep and beef property. So we've got 600 breeding sheep and 200 breeding cows. And probably what's become the heart of the property is our market garden. And so market garden employs 3 full-time staff, and we've got a farm shop where we sell most of the produce that we grow right here on the property.
So I'm looking at a picture of your website. The farm market or farm shop is the kind of like the shop that's in the foreground?
Yeah. And that's our
Okay.
predominant sort of public interface.
Okay. All right. And so then you were in the sheep, and talk to us a little bit about kind of like you said more that was a commodity. Talk to us a little bit about kind of like New Zealand's famous for its sheep, and kind of what's the life cycle there, and why did you realize that it wasn't something you wanted to stay with?
All right. Yeah, so I'm really proud to be a sheep farmer. I think it's a great industry. But it's just, I guess when I talk about being a global commodity, it's just that we were always being price takers rather than price makers as sheep farmers. And yeah, historically New Zealand's we really broke our ground as a nation with our sheep farming. We were sending wool products predominantly over to make garments for the war and this sort of thing, and that's kind of where we got our productive. But we've just over the years, there's been a lot more of a transition towards dairy. So that's really the backbone of our economy as a country, is the dairy industry. And that's all, again, a global commodity. We're just rendering it down and selling milk solids into China and other places all around the world. The sheep, the national flock is still pretty strong, but it's diminishing over time as it's not the most profitable sector. So as an example, like I said, the wool industry used to be a huge part of why people were sheep farming. Now it costs more to shear a sheep than it does for the price of the fleece that you get from it.
Oh, wow.
So really people are just shearing now as a animal maintenance cost, even though it's producing this incredible product still. That's just the challenges of competition with synthetic fibers. Yeah, so
Which are not as good for us to wear anyway, but
absolutely not, and they're definitely not as good as insulation or as carpets. You put oil in your walls, of course they're going to be flame, whereas wool's inflammable. So I know what I'm going to have inside my walls.
Yes, exactly. Yes. All right. So talk a little bit about. You said you're the Chief Regenerative Officer. What does that mean?
Yeah.
What are you responsible for?
It was just a bit of a laugh. Like a lot of organizations would have a chief executive officer, a chief technology officer, but farms should really have a chief regenerative officer. And that's just, I guess my role is focused on just like the rejuvenation of the land, thinking about like the life-sustaining properties. And so we've got a river that runs through the farm. Obviously the soil sustains anything that's growing there. Socially, there's a large component. So I'm just, it was just a bit of a play rather than being a farm manager so Chief Regeneration Officer, CRO. I think all organizations should have someone that's really considering the ecosystem that they're a part of.
Yes.
And yeah, so we're a dynamic property. We've got the market garden. There's this forestry component and sheep and beef. We've also got a events facility that people are coming and going, and so I've been sort of mingling between those different departments.
Okay.
They're just with this focus on life sustaining essence of the initiative.
Okay. And so then, what does your day-to-day look like?
Dynamic as a result of that. I've just started up a volunteer program, which has just started with like the Workaway system, international. So it would be like coordinating volunteers. Next summer, we're going to be stepping into something that's a little more structured, an internship program where 3 people will come for 3 months. And so
Okay.
part of the role is a bit of like administration and computer work, organizing that sort of thing. How is that going to look like when it goes onto our website? How are we going to find people that would be really good candidates for that program? I'm also organizing a permaculture orchard, which is a method by Stephen Sapowiak in Canada, and I've been looking at this for a long time, so really excited about implementing that. The general gist would be next door to the market garden, there's a grass paddock, and we're going to plant 3 rows to begin with of 120 meters long each of orchard rows, but instead of all one species like an apple, we're going to alternate between an apple, a peach, and then a nitrogen fixing. Then it might be a pear, a plum, then a nitrogen fixing, and so on, so forth down the row. With each fruit tree, there's going to be 2 shrub trees and 10 herbs as the ground cover. So yeah, planning and working towards that. And then in terms of getting out on the land, the sheep always need, their butts crutched or something, or moved from paddock to paddock. Cows need vaccinated. There's grass on the roadside that needs weed whacked there. So there's all sorts of activities as a part of that. And I like to have a good time, and because of the event space, it's about how do we allow people this a connection with the land. So looking into some of our regenerating bush on the property, the native blocks, and thinking how could we get some walking paths, which would double as like an agritourism opportunity moving forth. And we can also put some trap lines. And trapping's really important in New Zealand when we're talking about revegetating with natives, because we were a bird country before white settlement. We had no land mammals, and so with the initial European settlers came rats, ferrets, stoats, possums, and our birds had no evolutionary pressure with animals like that. So
correct.
We've got to be the ones. We also have no lions, mountain lions, or the natural predators for those sorts of things.
Yes.
So, it's really important to trap predators. So things like cutting in trails, which would have these multiple effects.
Okay, so you mentioned these nitrogen fixers between the different fruit trees. Talk a little bit about kind of like what species you're planning on using for that.
Okay, so there's a native tree that's really beautiful, Korfai, which translates as yellow. It's got a yellow flower. There'd be things like honey locust and black locust, Robinias. The model that Stephen uses is all about nitrogen fixes every third. I've heard and read literature that's overkill, and we don't need quite that much nitrogen fixing. And especially if my herb layer, I'm going to include things like lupins and clover. So not every one of those third tree will be a nitrogen, but the idea is just to maintain diversity. And so some of them will just be more broad ecosystem service trees. So I could plant a magnolia, which is just going to look really stunning as a backdrop to the garden, but it will also provide like an early cess of nectar and different trees that might be more focused on providing late season pollen, for example. So really just trying to mix up things that are not for human consumption, but therefore feeding the soil microbes or the insects that are going to help us maintain the system as years to come.
Okay, all right. So talk a little about the market garden you've got. What kind of are the main crops, and how many months a year can you grow in that based on your climate?
We're growing all year round.
Okay.
In the winter months, it's a lot more restricted what we can grow, but brassicas can sort of tick along. And so we've got a lot more diversity in the summer months. Like most market gardens, one of our core components is the salad greens. So we've got a diverse mesclun, and we're doing spread like microgreens alongside with that. But we're growing pumpkins, potatoes, corn, squash, beans. We're growing a few things that outside, like the staple diet, kohlrabi, as an example, onions. So it's a lot of the staples, and then a few things that are just on the side of being staples here. And there's still those ones come with marketing challenges, but it's nice to know what the garden's capable of.
So what kind of soil would you say that you have?
We've got like a clay loam.
Okay.
There's a lot of clay on the soil, but yeah. So when we first broke ground with the market garden, for the first season, we just grew cover crops and mulched them straight into the soil. And as we've
Okay.
grown each year, we've added new blocks, and we've done the same idea. So yeah, growing things like faba beans, daikon radish, sunflowers, oats all together, and mulching that straight in to help build soil.
Okay. All right. And then what would you say your major pests are?
Our major pests, uh, we've we've got like a white butterfly is a big one. We've sort of we don't manage too directly for pests, and we haven't had a huge amount of pressure just yet. But like any garden, grass is always trying to get back into the beds, and we've got aphids, and so there's a raft of them. We don't have any real major pests.
Okay. And then what is your bed prep system? Are you using like a BCS or?
Oh, I'm not in the market garden team, so this is
Okay.
just on the outside of my depth. But our blocks are set up, and we've got 6 blocks of 25 beds. They're
Yes.
25 meters long and they're 800 millimeters wide, the sort of international standard. And we've got a Ferrari walk behind tractor. That's a new addition to the arsenal, and so that's kind of one of the main things. So we were taking a lot of our biomass off, composting it and bringing
Okay.
it back in, and now we're just really trying to leave as much of that green matter on on our garden beds, and then mulching it straight on.
Okay. All right. So then in the greenhouse, are you growing more of your the heat loving crops?
Yeah, through the summer we'll do cucumbers, basil, tomatoes, sort of classics, and then now we've transitioned that into the leafy greens. So just keeping those pumping through the winter in the greenhouse.
Okay. All right. And then talk a little bit about kind of like some of these. They look like berms or raised on the edges of the market garden.
Yeah, those are mostly just for appearance. Where the market garden is a flat area, and so I guess it was just about adding a bit of topography next to the road. And we've just got some native grasses in there. We did do some flowering bulbs one season, but there was just a lot of grass pressure with that, and so it was a fair bit of maintenance for a crop that was just for appearance. So we've gone for just putting some native grasses in those berms. At another part of the property, we are building some hugel mounds, so they'll look very similar and might have a slightly more productive focus.
Okay, all right. And then talk about the volunteer program you're looking to set up. What kinds of things do you look for volunteers to do?
Right, so the market garden's got an endless list of jobs. We're only constrained by labour, and as a lot of market gardeners go, it's kind of, if you're not an owner-operator doing a lot of the work, the finances of an operation like that can become challenging. And
Correct.
so we're still on an investment journey with ours. So we could scale, but it's because we're selling most of our produce through the own shop. It's kind of limited by that labor factor. And then obviously because we've got a kind of high quality operation, at least by like Wellington standards, there's not anywhere of our size. So it is a good opportunity for people to learn. And so maybe 2 days a week would be in the garden. 1 day a week would be with a native restoration program. So that's both planting natives and also releasing grasses that are growing amongst them. There'd be 1 day a week or fortnight where we'll go to another property who we're connected with, and we'll just learn. So there's like a blueberry farm that's nearby. There's the largest food forest in the southern hemisphere is just over the hill, so we're going to be doing some work with that. And then there would be another day that would be more permaculturally focused. So there's the sort of market garden is really about annual horticulture, and then we're bringing in a lot more of a perennial focus as time goes on. So that'll be things like propagating from cuttings and digging in beds and growing mulch crops and those type of more perennial, long-lasting crops.
Gotcha. Before we get back to the episode, we have a couple minutes with Tracy, the founder of GRIP. Tracy, before you founded GRIP, you noticed most farmers are still using paper records to track all their assets and manage teams. What made you realize how big the problem was?
Yeah, so I started talking with farmers about the way they were managing operations a few years ago and found that most were still using paper to track everything. I mean, some of these were large organizations with dozens of greenhouses, irrigation systems, tractors, other pieces of equipment, not to mention storage, warehousing, and logistics. And I was shocked to see they were still using paper or spreadsheets, for equipment maintenance, records, and team assignments. So once we started taking a deeper look, we found a lot of maintenance and equipment issues getting overlooked, and they had a hard time finding the information when they needed it.
I see where you're coming from. Just the other day, I was trying to hunt down a very important scrap of paper that had disappeared. Now, we have a new paper shredder in the office, and not that I'm blaming anyone, but let's just say the kids might have gotten bored. But, tracking irrigation, maintenance, and records across the farm isn't an easy issue to solve. You have to get an app to track your planting and harvest records, and another app to track equipment maintenance, and another app to track team assignments. Pretty soon, you'll be trying to deal with a huge list of apps, and it wouldn't be worth the effort.
Yeah, that's what we realized too. There isn't anything that lets you track everything together, your assets and records, for all the stuff you own, as well as the team conversations you have in their assignments. So we decided if no one else had done it yet, we'd do it ourselves, and that's why we built GRIP.
Okay, so tell us a little bit more about GRIP. What can you actually do in the app?
Sure, so GRIP is the easiest way for farmers to track anything important that their operation relies on and centralize team conversations. You can set up reminders in the app for maintenance schedules, greenhouse checks, and other routine operations. You can also put GRIP QR code stickers on all your physical assets, making it easy for anybody to scan to check maintenance records or access other critical information when needed, which is typically when you're right in front of it.
Yeah, it sounds like GRIP provides a lot of ways to help you keep tabs on your operation. But what about small farms? Would you say GRIP is designed more for the large operation than small farms?
Well, not necessarily. We get a lot of small farmers using GRIP for team management. If you have more than, say, 2 to 3 team members, GRIP comes in real handy. You can handle all your team conversations, respond to questions, assign tasks, as well as send videos out for training and get notified if anyone finds an issue on the farm. Even for small operations, it's important to keep accurate records for expense tracking and regulatory audits, and GRIP can really help with that.
Good to know. Before we get back to the episode, is there anything else you'd like to share?
Yeah, so on top of that, we provide GPS location every time you access a GRIP QR code sticker, giving you lightweight location tracking for your stuff. Anyone listening can go download our app today. Just go to grip.ag. That's GRIP with 2 P's. Give it a try using code THRIVEIN25. That's THRIVEIN25 for 15% off.
Now, events is also something that's really big, and the farm seems to have almost an event every single week. I even see one here called the Brotherhood Experience. So you have a wide range. Some of these events are other people are hosting them, and you're just the location?
Most of what we've been doing has been hosting internally. We've got a quite a diverse team, and some of those are working on the farm, and other, for example, we've got an apothecary, and Tamsin's been doing wild herb, foraging and creating tinctures, and so those are sold in the farm shop as well. But obviously, it's a huge learning opportunity, and we're just thinking because of some of our flatlands are really productive, great producing land, but I guess the direction we're trying to head as being able to host and I guess the size of our asset, we're trying to wonder if food production is going to be our sole focus moving forth, or is the experience going to become more of a focus? And so we're just teasing out what's capable on the land. We do have something about every week. Those are pretty low-cost experiences generally. A yoga in the yurt or the wild foraging experience. But then just moving into some more multi-day, like the men's vitality experience, is kind of, it's just a lot of us have lost a connection to the land. A lot of us are living in urban areas without an idea where our food comes from. So if they can come out to a sort of quintessential rural environment and then do things like sit around the campfire and share something that's meaningful, we've been finding that people are leaving Mangaroa with just like rejuvenated. And so that's bringing that regenerative lens just out of, insects and soil life and into like the human condition.
Yeah. So one of the things you offer is, I believe, like a fall festival. Talk a little bit about that.
Okay, so the fall festival is kind of merged out of a program that runs in New Zealand called Open Farms Day.
Okay.
And that was a really great initiative by a guy, Daniel Eben. I think there's a few hundred farms around New Zealand, all in the second week of March, which is fall here, open their doors to the public. And so because of our, like I said, proximity to some pretty large urban centres, at least by New Zealand standard, we've been having, I think we had 1,500 to our last one and 1,000 to the one before. So that becomes kind of significant. And we do have regular garden tours of groups of 30 and that sort of thing. But when 1,000 people start rocking up, we kind of want to make sure there's an experience. So we would set up the teepee and make sure there's some hay bales and some activities from kids. We'll get live music playing. There'd be a fencing demonstration, a planting demo. People are sharing sheep and felting wool. So just trying to give like a one-day exemplar of some of the things that are happening on the farm and just some of the things that are happening in farm life in general.
Because it appears that you have that is quite a large event.
Yeah. Well, 1,500 people kind of, we'd hit a record to hit 1,000 at the one before, and then hitting 1,500, we just recognize, wow, that really is something that's wanted out there, and that's been one of the things that's been pushing us in the direction of offering experiences.
Yeah. So how do you advertise for that? Is that just solely on social media and through your email, or does the actual, maybe like the state kind of also push that, or the organization?
The Open Farm Days is a national program, and so they have their own internal marketing. So people are finding out from through the Open Farm network. But we've started doing that twice a year. So the last one we did was not a part of Open Farms, but just internally led, and every 1 year came from our own social media and email campaigns.
Oh, wow. That's crazy. Give us a little bit of an overview of kind of like what the next couple of years look like. What's the big plans moving forward?
Right. So, I'm really excited about this permaculture orchard. The focus on annual horticulture has allowed us to get up and running. In year one, we had a produce, and it allows us to like continually stock the market garden with things that people eat on a daily basis. But I think this return to a perennial system is just really necessary. And so if we're acting as a showcase and what's possible, I'd love to see some more, 150 trees is not large by an orchard standard, but it's huge by someone on a backyard standard, and it's totally possible from farms around the country. So showcasing that and getting a really good job done. I think this program, if we launch with 3 volunteers staying for 3 months, will be a big evolution of just like the standard sort of workaway or woofing model that people are coming and going. We're really going to try and have some integrity with an arrival process, a departure process, some personal development along the way. And so that's a huge step up for us in that realm. And then, just looking at how we can do the experiences. Like we'd said earlier, there's a lot of red tape in this modern culture, and New Zealand's certainly not exempt from that. So, because we're in rural zoning, if we want to start having people come and stay, there's all sorts of question marks on how we navigate that with what New Zealand has as the Resource Management Act. So we're looking at creative ways of how we could create a facility that is going to have people able to come and go, learn from what we're doing here, contribute to the project, but not come at just like a huge bureaucratic cost. So looking at the 1985 Campground Act, which was established in New Zealand to kind of help push these sort of projects a bit faster than a usual resource consent process. And so, looking at setting up a sort of campground in the next couple of years, and that will really allow the flow of people to come and go by the project.
Yeah, that would be super cool. Yeah, we have an 8-acre urban farm, so we are pretty tight on space, but you guys are very extensive, so that would be really cool to be able to have people camp there and they could come volunteer in the garden, shop in the store, all those sorts of things.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, we're calling the volunteer program in general the Mahi Exchange.
Okay.
Mahi means work in Te Reo, the language of the Māori here in New Zealand. And yeah, we'd have a few different categories. There would be the workaway program, people just coming and staying fluidly. There would be this land workers cohort, and yeah, and there'd be also just the sort of people that, you know, if we're offering an experience, even if they are a paying guest at a campsite, maybe they would decide to spend their time releasing some natives or hoeing a hugel mound or whatever it might be.
Absolutely. Now, with the animals you raise, do you process or does someone process that for your store as well?
Yeah, we are selling our own meat, but currently they're getting sent to a butchery in town,
Okay.
a slaughterhouse and a butchery, and then coming returned to us all packaged and good to go. We have a butchery on the property, which was set up because I guess when we were establishing the farm, it's a bit of an amalgamation of
Yes.
two existing farms and a series of lifestyle blocks. The valley that we're in was subdivided into 4 hectare, or yeah, I think that's 10-acre blocks historically, and so we've kind of purchased a few of those over the years to try and patch together a functional farm. And with some of those has come some assets, such as this butchery, and we're big keen as to be able to do some more of that in-house. But I guess we're not trying to swell Mangaroa Farms entity too much bigger than it already is. And we're
Okay.
really looking to this model that I've heard framed as an ecological business park, or it's kind of like a series of enterprises that can work, that can coexist and support one another. So really what we'd like to do is find someone, a keen butcher and an entrepreneur, to come and set up, and then there would be like a working relationship with them, rather than, yeah, Mangaroa Farms continue to swell the sort of payroll and that sort of thing.
Absolutely. One other thing you mentioned at the beginning was the mature pine that you guys have on farm. And that is that a monocrop that was planted for timber?
It's a monocrop that was planted for timber, correct?
Okay.
And we've got a real testing situation here in New Zealand of just a lot of, particularly sheep and beef country, because that's usually the country that's been that hasn't been converted. The high producing stuff's been more turned to dairy over the last few decades, and so sheep and beef's been pushed further into the hills. And now with just like the economics of sheep and beef farming and the economics of the ETS, the trading scheme for carbon credits,
Yeah.
the most profitable land use for that sort of terrain is in pine monocultures. So some of it's been planted for forestry and some of it's just been planted for carbon credits. And
Gotcha.
the challenge with that is that we didn't have radiata pine, and so it sort of blows and it spreads into more sensitive environments and unique New Zealand terrains. And so we've got a big wilding pine issue, and then we're just continuing to plant more and more productive sort of farming country, and that's really gutting some of the rural communities in New Zealand. So all of a sudden, some of these small schools, because there was a valley with about 4 different farms, and that's just about enough to keep a school running. As soon as a couple of those farms sell to the forestry guys, then those schools can't keep, and then the sports clubs start to fold, and then more and more people have to kind of move out of those areas, meaning the forestry is one of the only viable land uses. So it is a big challenge for us, and we haven't had a historical issue with wildfires here in the country, and then you look around the country, around the world, to some of the places where that's an issue, and it's just sort of, you leave your head scratching why we're putting ourselves into a risk like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So with that, and I also was looking at your Instagram here, you in the past year, I think the farm purchased another farm to add to it. And that kind of really expands your reach and allows you guys to do more.
It does. And we're just at the start of our observation year still with that. We only took on about the start of 2025, and it's another 350 hectares, so we're really excited about that. A lot of the reason is just about protection. There was a 70 house development planned for that farm when it was being sold, and a lot of the residents up our small windy road didn't think we could handle an extra 100 cars into the valley, so that was one of the considerations. And then just on this new block there is a lot of this native regenerating bush already intact, so we're thinking that compared to some of the areas that we're planning to harvest pines and replant and put all that work in, that we could be a little more effective with this new place just on protecting what's already made a start. And like I say, putting in walking tracks that will help with agritourism, but will also allow us to trap predators. And that would probably be the zone where we'd end up with the campsite and where we're exploring, because it's really idyllic. You sort of you push through this little gap between two hills, and you end up in a space where there's just no development to be seen for a long way. So we're really stoked and excited about what's yet to be named, but we're just framing Farm 3 right now.
Very cool. Very cool. What would you say your favorite tool on the farm is?
Ooh, that's a good question. I like my heavy rake. I do all sorts of work with that. Yeah, for the trail building in the garden. It's a all-terrain landscaping tool.
Okay, all right. Is there a specific brand? Is that something we might be able to get in the U.S., or is it specific to where you are?
Is Stanley in the U.S.? I'd presume so. Yeah. I've got a heavy-duty Stanley rake, and I take it with me all the time.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we have that company, but I'm not sure if they sell that rake. So I'm going to have to dive into that and see if I can find that. So. All right. Well, hey, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. We appreciate you sharing about what it's like to farm in your part of the world, and keep up the regenerative aspects of what you're doing.
Nice one, Michael. It's been good talking to you, man. And if any of your listeners are thinking about checking out a farm in New Zealand, we're always looking for people ready to pitch in, even someone with some expertise. We could find a longer term opportunity. Lots to explore.
Well, awesome.
So there you have it, another episode in the books. So I'd love if you would hop on over to iTunes and leave us a rating and a review. Those mean everything to us. We love to hear what you're thinking. If you have a podcast guest that you can recommend, please pop on over to the Thriving Farmer Podcast website and leave us a review. That's thrivingfarmerpodcast.com.